Hi, fifth grade. How are you? Good to see you. I'm just gonna get the slideshow ready. Okay. So welcome to math class. Today we will continue to learn about equivalent ratios. So we're going to use the greatest common factor to write ratios in simplest form. So let's try to find a ratio of 4 to 6 in simplest form. Okay. Um, so I've got I'm just going to also write it on my board. Okay. Now to find a ratio in simplest form, we need to divide the terms by their greatest common factor. Okay. Do you remember what a greatest common factor is? Factors make up are the numbers that you multiply to get the product. Okay, so we have a 4 and we have a 6. Okay, so I'm going to write it on the side here. Okay, so a 4 and a 6. Okay, and so let's see, the factors of 4, let's see, what makes 4? I know that 1 times 4 works. Is there another number? 2 times 2. We just need to write 2. So the factors of 4 are 1, 2, and 4. Okay. What about 6? What are the factors of 6? It is, I've got a 1 and a 6. 1 times 6 is 6. Can you think of other ones? If you said 2 and a 3, you're right. And I believe that's it, right? So looking at this, what do you see as the greatest common factor? So let me see. They have a 1 in common, okay? 2 in common. No 3s, no 4s or 6s in common. So it looks like this is the greatest common factor, okay? Between 4 and 6. All right. And so now that I found the greatest common factor is a 2, okay, you want to write this in simplest form. It's kind of like a fraction. Do you remember fraction? We can write ratios with a fraction bar too, okay? So this is the same thing as writing 4, 6, right? Or 4 to 6 like this, okay? And remember with fractions, when I want to write it in simplest form, because simplest forms means I need the numerator and denominator to become smaller, I need to, do I divide or multiply? I would have to divide, right? I'm going to divide by a common factor. But you can save a step if you divide by the greatest common factor. So in here, the greatest common factor is 2. And then so that'll become what? That'll become 2/3, right? Okay. But remember, this ratio can also be represented using a fraction bar. It's just that we say it differently and it means something different. Like 4/6 is the fraction. 4/6 is the ratio. Okay, so following the same idea, when it's written like this, in this form, okay, again, we want to write this in simplest form, right? So we're going to divide by the greatest common factor because we want it in simplest form. Okay, so each of the terms needs to become smaller, so we have to divide, okay? So you're going to divide this by the greatest common factor 2, and whatever you do on one side, you have to do it on the other side, okay? Divided by 2, and what does that become? Well, it looks like it becomes, so 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So here it is. Here's my um, simplest, my ratio in simplest form, okay? And that's what they did there. In the picture, it almost looks like a plus, but it's actually a division sign in the blue circle, okay? Now, I have a question, okay? We saw that here, another common factor was a 1. Is it wise to divide by 1 to get the ratio in simplest term? I'm sorry, in simplest form? Well, I would say no, because it's still the same ratio, right? Okay, if I want to divide 4 by 1 and 6 by 1, I still get 4 to 6. It's the same, right? Same thing here. If I have this in a fraction, using with the fraction bar, 4 divided by 1 and 6 divided by 1 is still 4/6. Do you see that? Okay, so although it is a common factor, um, it's just not wise to use it. It won't change your ratio at all. Okay, um, once the only common factor is a 1, then you have it in simplest form. So you can use it to see, hey, is it my only common factor with my terms? And if it is, then hey, you did it. You got it in simplest form. Because if we look at, so let's look at 2 to 3, okay? So I'm going to write 2 and 3, okay? So what are my, factors of 2? Well, 1 times 2 and 2 times 1, and that's it. What about 3? 1 times 3 and 3 times 1, and that's it. So it looks like here the greatest common factor is actually just 1. In fact, it's the only common factor. And when you have that, then that means it's in simplest form. Okay, so yay, you did it. All right? Okay. So now it's your turn. You're going to pause the video and you're going to try to do this on your own, okay? So pause it, and then when you're ready, please come back and play the video. Alrighty, welcome back. So for question number 1, I see that the greatest common factor of 12 and 4 is 4. Okay, and we can just double check again and see and list it out. And if you have trouble remembering the factors of a number, I would recommend looking up a multiplication chart. Okay, online. It's easily found online. If you just type up multiplication chart on Google, you'll find plenty. Let's see. So we have 4 and 12. So let's look up some factors of 4 and 12. Okay, so I like to kind of figure out the multiplication pairs, okay? That way it's easier for me to list it out. So I always start with 1, okay? So 1 and 4, right? And then I always kind of, because I know if it's 1, then the highest factor is that number itself, okay? So 1 times 4. And what's another number? Oh, 2. Is this what we did before? We already did this one, didn't we? Okay. All right, what about 12? Well, I'm going to start with 1, right? And 12, 2. I know I can do it by 2 because it's an even number. I can always, I will always have a factor of 2 if it's an even number. So 2 and 6. 2 times 6 is 12. What else? 3 times 4. Okay. And 5 doesn't go in to this. It's not a factor. Okay. And 6 does, and there it is. Okay. So it looks like the greatest common, well, I have a common factor of 1, common factor of 2, no 3, common factor of 4, no 6, and no 12. So 4 is my greatest common factor. Okay. So again, I want to write my ratio 12 to 4 in simplest form. So I know I have to divide by the greatest common factor, okay? And so I divided it by 4, and I get 3 to 1, okay? Let's look at, find the greatest common factor of 9 and 15, okay? So here I'm going to write 9, and I'm going to write 15, okay? So for 9, let me see, I just like to write all the factors. So 1 and 9. What else? I have a 3 and a 3, so I can just write that once, and that's it. All right, what about 15? 1 and 15. What else? Oh, 2? No, because it's not an even number, right? 3 goes into it, 3 and 5. Anything else? 4 doesn't, 5 does, but I already wrote 5, and so that's it. Okay, so the greatest common factor is, let me see, 1 is a common factor, 3 is a common factor, 5 no, 9 no, 15 no. So it looks like 3 is the greatest common factor. Okay, and so now, because I want to simplify it, I need to divide, right? Because I need my terms and my ratio to get smaller, okay, to be in simplest form. So I'm going to divide it by the greatest common factor of 3, and I get 3 to 5. All right. Good job. Okay, so now we're going to use multiplication to find missing terms in equivalent ratios, okay? Now, find the missing terms in these equivalent ratios. 2 to 5 is equivalent to 6 to what? Okay. So in that problem, they wrote the ratios across. Okay. But I like to write it stacked on top of one another. So the first ratio is 2 to 5. Okay? And then the second ratio is, the first term is 6, and then here, I don't know what this is, right? They put a question mark here, okay? So I want to find out, wait a minute, okay? If this is equivalent to that, okay, what do I need to do, okay? So this is how I would do it, and then I'll show you how the book teaches you to do it, okay? Look at the first, which terms are shown. Well, it looks like the first term here in the first ratio is shown, and the first term in the second ratio is shown. The second term in the first ratio is shown. The second term in the second ratio is not shown. So we're going to work with what we know, okay? And what we know in both of these ratios is the first term, okay? So we're going to work with that, okay? And so here I see from 2 to 6. From 2 to 6, does it get bigger or smaller? I know that it gets bigger, right? Okay. So that means I have to multiply. Okay, I have to multiply it by something. Okay, multiplying it by something. And whatever I do on this side of the ratio, I have to do it on the other side of the ratio to the second term. So I know here I'm going to multiply it by whatever I need. But to figure out what I need to multiply it, I have to think about my multiplication and division facts that I know, okay? And so to find what I multiply it by, I can look at the bigger term, which is 6, right? And I can divide it by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. So basically, do you guys remember did I give you these? Like this multiplication, division, fact triangle, okay? So it's like a 6 and a 2 and a 3 like this, okay? And so basically from here, it's 2 times 3 is 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so these are all related facts with multiplication and division. Okay, so if we know 2 of these numbers, we can figure out what the third number is. All right, so in this case, that's one way we use division to figure out what we need to multiply this by. Okay, so we have to multiply this by 3, because 6 divided by 2 is 3. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So 2 times 3 is 6. 5 times 3 is what? Okay. Well, that's going to be 15. Okay. right? So that's one way we use division to figure out what we need to multiply, all right? So it says first find the multiplying factor in the book. And first method is you can figure out, well, okay, you can just use multiplication. 2 times what gives you 6, if that'll help you, okay? And this girl in the picture, the student figured out, oh, 2 times 3 gives you 6, okay? Or method 2, you can divide, right? 6 divided by 2 is equal to 3. And this is what that student did. All right, so 3 is a multiplying factor. And then 3 times 5 is 15. Multiply the second term by the multiplying factor, just like we did on the board here. Okay, and that's what you get. The missing term is 15. All right. Now we're going to use division to find missing terms and equivalent ratios. Okay, so find the missing term in these equivalent ratios. Okay, 15 to 12 is equivalent to what to 4. Okay, again, in the book, they wrote it across. Okay, but I like to stack it because I like to kind of draw these arrows that point down because I see the first terms are on top of one another and the second terms are on top of one another. And that way I can visualize better what's going on with the ratios. Okay, so I'm going to write that on the side over here and I'm going to stack them up. So it's 15 to 12 is equivalent to, I don't know what, question mark, to 4. Which terms do I know in both ratios? Do I know the first term in both ratios or the second term in both ratios? What is known or what is shown is the second term in both of these ratios. Okay? So now I'm going to see, okay, from 12 to 4, okay? How did it get, did from 12 to 4? From 12 to 4, did the numbers get smaller or bigger? It got smaller. So, should I multiply 12 by a number to get 4, or should I divide 12 by a number to get 4? I have to divide it by something, right? But I'm not quite sure yet. Okay, I need to think about what I need to divide this by. Okay, I need to divide it by, okay, something like 15 divided by something, right? So let me see. 12 divided by what gets you 4? Well, I'm going to look at I'm going to draw a triangle again, okay? So it looks like 12 is my biggest number, okay? All right, because in division, order matters, right? Okay, so 12 is my biggest number, and in one of these corners, I have 4, okay? So 12 divided by 4 is what? That's the same thing as saying a number times 4 is 12. Can you think of that number? It's 3, okay? Because again, when we go across here is 3 times 4 or 4 times 3, 12 divided by 4, or you can do 12 divided by 3 is 4, 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, all right, so in this case here, I see, oh, you know what? Okay, to get 4, I have to do 12 divided by 3. So then whatever I do on one side of the ratio, I have to do it on the other side of the ratio. So I have to do 15 divided by 3. And what is 15 divided by 3? If you said 5, you are correct. Good job. And so this is what the book tells you, okay? You can, figure out, what you need to divide it by first, okay? Or you can do 12 divided by 4 is 3. So you know that you have to divide it by 3, okay? So you can just take a look at that. And that's the picture that we drew together here, okay? All right, so I want you to pause the video and I would like for you to try guided practice numbers 9 through 11 on your own, okay? All right, see you soon. All right, welcome back. I'm gonna just show you the answers to these guided practices, okay? So this is what you guys should have filled out. And just make sure as you do these problems, you see the first ratio to the second ratio. Determine, are the numbers getting bigger or are they getting smaller? Okay, because it'll tell you what operation you need to do. You'll either need to divide or multiply, right? Thankfully, in the book, they already told you what to do, okay? But if it doesn't tell you the operation sign of like multiplying or dividing, then you'll know what you need to do, okay? In this example here, if the numbers from the first ratio need to get bigger, you need to multiply here on this side. If the numbers from the first ratio to the second ratio get smaller, you need to divide, okay? All right, okay, good job. All right, well, that's all for today. Have a wonderful spring break. I will see you on Thursday for our Moodle session. Bye.